Hello and bienvenido, San Antonio. Welcome to the Alamo Hour, discussing the people, places, and passion that make our city. My name is Justin Hill, a local attorney, a proud San Antonian, and keeper of chickens and bees. On the Alamo Hour, you'll get to hear from the people that make San Antonio great and unique and the best kept secret in Texas. We're glad that you're here. All right, welcome to this episode of the Alamo Hour. Today's guest is Drew Galloway. Drew is the executive director of Move Texas and also a bagpipe player. We'll talk to him about that in a little bit. Move Texas was started in 2013 by some students at UTSA right here in San Antonio. The goal was to increase participation in local elections, and really I think it's largely been doing that by way of voter registration, and we're going to talk to Drew about that some. Drew, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. Awesome to be here with you today.
Yeah, I got to know about y'all through a mutual friend, Stephen Lopez, when he was doing some fundraiser, and, you know.
Yep, Stephen's been with us for a couple of years now and is now serving as the board chair.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, I won't hold that against you. Stephen will listen to this, and he'll give me his critiques on how I did. He always does. I start all these with kind of a top 10, give a little color to who I'm talking to, so I'm just going to walk you through some. They change every time.
Let's go.
All right. When and why did you move to San Antonio?
I got a job with Specs Family Partners. So I was working in the wine business. They reached out, wanted me to do new market development for them, and I came to San Antonio.
What year was that?
That was 2011.
So new market, did that mean they were just starting to move in here?
Mm-hmm. They had the store that was in the north part of the city, but I helped work at that store and then opened the Days of Olive store and a couple others. And
the one close to me is the one by the airport, and it's pretty sad.
It's kind of tucked away under that bridge.
Yeah.
But
and you go to the Specs in Houston, and they've got all the the bells and whistles and cheeses and meats, and you go to that one by the airport, and it's
if you go to the flagship store in Houston, you get spoiled.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll take that up with Specs. We're all doing our best to support right now. Things are strange. You were talking to me off the record about how you're doing some cooking, but are you doing any of the to-goes or the takeouts, the places that are trying to survive and we're all trying to help? Are there any that you have found, hey, they've got a great deal, I like supporting them? We did Playland yesterday, and it was fantastic. So any of the places you've been frequenting?
No, there's a little wine shop called Little Death that is right on the St. Mary's Strip, and so I've been frequenting them. Just walk in, pick up a bottle of wine, just because it's.
You live over there?
No, I live on the southwest side, but yeah, I just that's my favorite wine bar in the city. So if you've never been to Little Death, you should go.
Were you there when Stefan was cooking his Italian tripe?
No.
Did you see it?
No, I did not.
I was there. So
what?
Not only do I support, I went to there, and it was very earthy flavored.
Oh.
I mean, it was tripe cooked in a ton of white wine, and they just turned it into a party. This was right before everything shut down.
Wow.
It was great.
Yeah, no, I've thrown a couple happy hours, like personal and professional there. Love that place. It's like my favorite little bar in town.
Also, you can grab a burger at Burger Boy and then go get some wine. That's my favorite thing with wine is a burger, actually. Not the steaks and all that, burger.
Yeah. I try to be good and just drink wine, and then usually I have a couple glasses of wine and then go have the burger. So
I'm not going to tell you what I do. Favorite hidden gems in San Antonio. We're going to try to stick with this with everybody. Ron brought up Denman Estate Park, which I had never heard of. Somebody else brought up Jack White Trail, which I'd never heard of. To me, I think the Japanese tea garden is definitely up there. What are some of your favorite hidden gems that if you have guests that come in, you say, okay, it's probably not in your little manual, but go check out this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will tell you. I will tell you that my family loves Pearsall Park. If you haven't been there, it's amazing. I live literally 5 minutes away from that, if not closer.
Is it in Pearsall?
Yeah, it's right on Pearsall Road.
Huh.
And the trails are phenomenal. You can do like a wooded trail, or there's some hills if you want to get it.
Like south of 1604?
Yeah, like where, sort of like where it oversees Lackland. You can see the Boeing
okay.
plant right
there. Yeah,
there.
no, I didn't know about that.
Love the place. It's great. It's got a great kiddie park too, post quarantine.
Is it open right now?
No.
Is it a city park?
It is a city park.
Okay.
The trails are open. I don't think the playgrounds are.
All right. Are you a reader? And if so, anything right now?
Oh, yeah. I am a reader. I read a lot. I'm reading How to Be an Anti-Racist right now. So it's a great book.
Is it like one page long?
Yeah, I know.
Just don't be a racist.
Yeah. And so I'm reading that. Let's see. I recently, like a year or so ago, brought a book to Move called Radical Candor, and I'm rereading that because we've got some new staff members on and stuff. But that's another great sort of like business organizational book.
Okay. Do you watch South Park?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I feel like Radical Candor might have microaggressions discussed in there somewhere, but I don't know. All right. Who's your favorite bagpipe player?
Oh man, that's such a hard question.
Is there more than like 6 of them?
Yeah. Like, I'm gonna totally nerd out now. So I've started playing bagpipes when I was 14 in Georgia, and I loved Simon Fraser University, and which is in British Columbia, Canada. They alternate, with a couple other big pipe bands as like the world champions every year. But the pipe sergeant of that band is Jack Lee, and so I get to see Jack Lee a couple times a year, and I'm always like kind of giddy.
Okay.
And so yeah.
So this is kind of one of the major reasons behind this podcast is there are so many people with these strange passions that are they're interesting to hear. So I wanted to do that. So we're going to talk about bagpipes here in a little bit.
Great.
Are you a social media person? And if so, which is your favorite platform?
That's a great question. I'm a forced social media person. So I do quite a bit because of my work. I would say, my favorite platform right now, and for the last year, has been TikTok.
Okay.
So if you are on TikTok, it's the way.
Do you TikTok?
I do not.
Okay.
No, I am a voyeur-esque TikTok observer.
So I have it. I've gotten on it a few times. Have you ever heard of Gary Vaynerchuk?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was at some conference. He spoke and he starts talking about TikTok. I had never even heard of it. So I opened it, and now I've realized I don't know. You swipe one way and you favorite them. You swipe another way, you get a new video. I don't really understand the process, so I think I've favorited a lot. And
there's like a For You channel and then a following channel or something like that. So but Move has a TikTok channel.
Okay.
And so like we're like building content for that.
Okay.
So.
Well, Gary Vaynerchuk said even lawyers should have one, and I don't know how that would work.
If you want to talk to under 21-year-olds, that's where you do it at.
I don't know if the wife would be real jazzed about me marketing to under 21-year-olds, or the law for that matter. All right. Outside of the pandemic, take that sort of veil away right now. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges facing San Antonio?
I think that the two biggest challenges facing San Antonio right now are equity and poverty, and that's only been sort of like elevated from the more.
What do you mean by equity?
The fact that there's such even like we're the most economically segregated city in the United States, and so if you grow up in the neighborhood that I live in right now, versus if you grow up say 15 miles to the north of here, there's essentially a 15 to 20 year life difference.
Or 1 mile to the east of here, yeah.
Totally.
Or 1 mile to the west of here, yeah. I mean,
and so I think that we can do more as a city to address that. And poverty is like linked in with that, but yeah, I think that we can do a lot to address that, and that has been exacerbated by this moment.
Mayor Nirenberg made a good point when he was on. We were talking about the opportunities of the pandemic, and one of the things he brought up was that it is going to give the city an opportunity to kind of rewrite our rule book, because it has highlighted those problems, but it has also put so many people in the pot that they thought they were not in. So hopefully it'll allow attitudes to change and therefore policy to change.
Yeah, absolutely. If it happens to you or somebody that you know and love, it changes that perspective.
Yeah. Favorite fiesta event?
I'm going to be super basic and say Battle of the Flowers, because typically
that's the first so far.
Yeah. For me, I typically work most of Fiesta, or I do fundraising events or that kind of stuff. And so Battle of the Flowers is the first like morning off that I have, and I take my kids to the parade and that kind of stuff.
Have you ever done Pooch Parade?
No, but I have friends who actually have had dogs that have like won or like have like placed in it, and so
anyone can have their dog in it. By the way,
Yeah.
so like if you've got a friend who's like my dog was in it, that just means they walked in.
they
the
just
parade.
walked in. Okay, great.
It's a cool event.
Yeah, my dog.
A morning
totally,
event, cool event, kid friendly.
My dog is not capable of that. So like she's a very good dog, but not to the quality of the Pooch Parade yet. So.
Mine probably wouldn't do well because he's just going to bark at all the dogs. But he's a good-looking dog, so he could probably win it. A lot of what y'all do is voter registration. You do not have a voter registration background as a human being. I mean, you went to the Culinary Institute, you did wine, then you kind of had this circuitous path to get there. Once you got into voter registration and voter engagement, what's sort of been one of the more surprising demographic sort of groupings or behaviors that you have seen that you thought, wow, I would have never expected this?
That's a good question. I think that the biggest misconception that I hear all the time is that young people don't care about this. Like you're talking to, like they will tell me that I'm talking to a very thin group of people, and that's not necessarily the case at all. We see that if we engage them, tell them why their vote matters, that kind of stuff, we can move them from unregistered voter to registered voter to active.
And what's the harder thing there, moving them to registered voter or moving them from registered voter to someone who actually votes? I would think the latter.
Yeah, it is. I mean, for the most part, it takes only a couple minutes to get registered. In this moment with COVID-19, it takes much, much longer because we can't actually see people. But if it was normal times, I could register you in a couple minutes. But it really does take some significant work to get a registered voter to the polls. The average, at least for MOVE and most youth organizations, is somewhere between 6 and 8 touches. And that includes text message, phone call, door knock, potential like mail drop, that kind of stuff.
It's just such a sort of strange dichotomy because the passion level among those age groups is so high, yet their going to the polls is so low. And then you take like the maybe elderly whose go to the poll is very high, but their passion level is way less. It's just kind of a strange dichotomy in that world.
Yeah, it's really like a habit is what it is. Voting itself is a habit. So it's like going to the gym. It's sort of like that's the way I see like sort of established elderly voters, as they've been going to the gym for weeks and weeks and weeks, and then they just go do it. It might not be like, oh my God, I've got to go to the gym, but it's kind of like, I'm just going to the gym because this is what I do. And then it's the new voter is the folks that are like, we're trying to get to go to the gym twice this week,
all right.
And so what we really do is focus on vote 3 times, and then studies show that person is like almost a lifelong voter. But we've got to get them to vote in a city election, a state election, and a federal election.
Okay.
Like back to back to back.
All right. So that's what we're going to talk about for a little bit. And then as we get close to running out of time, I'm going to talk to you about bagpipes because it's my show and I think it's interesting. Okay. So what is MOVE and how is MOVE different than Thrive and some of these other voter registration groups?
Yeah, that's a great question. So MOVE is an acronym, and most people don't realize that. So it stands for Mobilize, Organize, Vote, and Empower. And it was, even though we're like one of the largest youth organizing groups and youth voter registration groups in the nation now, it was started by these like 7 students at the University of Texas at San Antonio. So we're homegrown.
Are they still involved?
Yeah, we've our advocacy manager, Alex Bernal, is one of the founders. And so it's one of those things of like these students came together in 2013 and said, how can we get more involved, especially in city politics, but like how can we get more involved, get more of our peers voting, that kind of stuff. And so they decided we're going to form this student organization at UTSA called Mobilize, Organize, Vote, and Empower. And so they formed it, and they were like, we're going to register people to vote. Young people. We're going to teach them why voting matters and like what and link issues that they care about to voting. And then we're going to do like the most crazy visible things we can possibly do to make voting fun, engaging, cool. And so they registered 1,000 people in 60 days at UTSA. And over the course of that 2013 city election is when they really worked out a lot of the early model on dressing in banana suits and putting like our robot like cardboard costumes on and throwing parties at the polls and things like that, where we were like, we are going to make voting fun and engaging for young people and not just this like sort of like top-down narrative of like something you got to do. Like the one thing that we have learned is that the sort of like it's your civic duty narrative is actually detrimental to like voter turnout for young people. Like
and young people being 35 and younger.
Yeah, I would say 30, 35 or younger. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so we deal with like that entire spectrum of young people.
It's nonpartisan.
Nonpartisan.
Okay. Yep. I'd ask, but I'm gonna go back to it. How are y'all? How do y'all separate yourself? How are you different than some of the other kind of young person voter registration groups that are in Texas?
Yeah, we're youth led. We're hyper grassroots. So, we believe that young people are powerful, and we believe that they can make a massive difference in essentially all levels of government. But we're really working with new first, second, third time voters. And the best way to show them that power is by getting them involved at the city level or regional level and getting them and showing them that they can have a voice. So if they show up to County Commissioner's Court at Bexar County, most likely they will be like, if we can mobilize 15 people on an issue there, that is a giant like turnout for Bexar County Commissioner's Court, because like your average large groups are not paying attention to that like hyper level local.
So if you're nonpartisan, how do y'all decide what specific issues you can and cannot get involved in?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great question. So nonpartisan to us means independent. So we don't endorse parties. We don't endorse candidates, that kind of thing. We do work on issues. And issues are like we identify those like city by city that we work in. And so when I joined Move, it was just in San Antonio. I joined in 2016. And so we were Move San Antonio at that point. We were on about 10 campuses. But in early 2018, we began growing. We went to Laredo and then to Seguin and San Marcos and in Austin. And then in 2019, we went to Dallas and to Houston. So we're now in 7 cities, 55 campuses. We've got 6 field organizers there doing this work day in and day out with advocacy folks as well.
And then within the issues, are y'all advocating for issues related to access to voting? I mean, is that sort of, Mothers Against Drunk Driving is nonpartisan, they can't support, but they do support safe road drunk driving issues. Are y'all's almost all about involvement in voting?
Yeah, we're at our core a voting rights issue. We also advocate for like young people's issues, student issues. So we've done work around polling locations on college campuses. Our very first issue we got involved in was the non-discrimination ordinance in San Antonio. So equality, access, all of that stuff is things that we work on. And we're doing a ton of like climate work now, some criminal justice work.
Who decides what issues to get involved in?
That's decided at like the local level. So like we might be doing a lot of like say immigration justice work in Laredo and San Antonio, but in Dallas we're doing some housing work and some climate work and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And so it's really tailored to the students that we work with, and I think that's what sets us apart from some of the other like sort of like top-down national organizations, is that we listen to young people, we put them out front, and then we show them the power that they have.
So does each individual sort of group get to decide what issues they want to get involved in, or does it have to get vetted?
Like we obviously have a process for like issue screens and that kind of stuff, so that we don't like sort of
because
like,
college kids can be crazy.
yeah, there's a lot of things they care about,
Yeah.
and we can't do everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is one of those things of like we do our best to like be responsive, but at our core we are a voting rights group. I mean, we got started with expanding voter registration, and we're working on vote by mail right now, and lots of other things.
How did you get involved?
That's a great question. So, I landed in San Antonio in 2011, and I got really deeply involved in the non-discrimination ordinance. I was working at Specs, loved working in the wine industry, got deeply involved in the non-discrimination ordinance, and was like, I love this. And so I started interning like outside of college with then Bexar County Commissioner Tommy Atkinson. And so I was like, I want to do this. I'm going to make this pivot. And so I pivoted out of the wine industry and into civics by going to UTSA. I studied public administration there. And I ran into all these political science students who had started Move UTSA. And so we had classes together. We knew each other. I went to Washington, D.C. as a Bill Archer Fellow and worked in the White House. And then I came back. I landed at UT Austin at the Annette Strauss Institute for Civic Life, and I ran their millennial programming there. And I got a call one day from Hannah Beck, who was the first ED of Move. And
I didn't know she ran that.
Yeah.
Okay.
She was one of the founders, and now sits on our board. And so Hannah was like, we're looking for a new ED. Are you interested? And I applied. I was super fortunate that they selected me, and I started in April 2016. It was me and a field organizer, 2 fellows, and 2 interns. Our budget that year in a presidential election was $90,000.
I mean, that's not bad for a first year.
Yeah. By that time, we'd been 3 years operating. But yeah, like it was, for us, that was a big year. We still registered 8,500 people with essentially a 2-person staff, and on a $90,000 budget. And now, we're 7 cities, 55 campuses, 22 employees, full-time employees.
Budget?
$3.8 million.
Nice.
So.
Are y'all 501c3?
501c3 and C4.
Okay, so you have an advocacy arm?
The C4, we do all of our get out the vote and some advocacy work under that.
What are the sources of funding?
We're funded from a lot of sort of like national, state, local. We've got like a lot of like larger national foundations, family foundations that fund us. We've got statewide funders that fund us, political donors, that kind of stuff. And then a lot of our like local donations come in from students, their parents, professors. We have this program called Movement Makers that you can like be a monthly donor, and it's really, really popular.
Do any of the political parties support y'all financially?
No.
Could they?
I don't know if they could illegally, but because like we don't have a PAC or anything like that, and we're not interested in that. So yeah, but yeah.
I was just wondering. I mean, if they're just saying, hey, it's in everybody's benefit to register voters, we know y'all are nonpartisan. Here's some money. They could do that, I think, but
probably
they don't.
Could, yeah,
because they want to go register their people.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the funding. I mean, since y'all went from a $90,000 to a $3.8 million budget. Talk to me just kind of generally about how does a small nonprofit like that with such a niche focus, how do you increase your budget $3.71 million in 4 years?
Yeah, it was a struggle. I think that my first year and a half was a lot of relationship building, there for us there was a catalyst moment at the end of 2017 where we knew that we had to grow because we were just like, there's no way to grow the size of the budget and just stay in one city. So we had a donor, Michael Watts, who was like super gracious.
Previous guest of the show.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he did a match with us, which was like the catalyst for growth for Move. He gave us 100,000. If we could raise 100,000 out of like our grassroots donors, we did it, and that propelled us into growing to Laredo and Seguin and San Marcos. And
has he continued to support?
Yeah, I'm sure he's a supporter of us and that kind of thing.
How did he get involved in it?
We met through some mutual friends here in town, Christian Archer, and an ex-board member.
Okay. So that's still just 100,000 of a 3.8. I mean, is a lot of the money from this foundation money and nonprofit money?
Yeah, and once we started to grow, like not only our geographic size and our sort of influence, that began to attract like larger national foundations that would, budget of, our second year budget of 2017 was 110,000, and and then we jumped up to I think it was 800,000 for 2018, and then 1.4 for 2019, and 3.8 for 2020.
Okay, so outside of COVID, talk to me. How do y'all go about registering people? What's the most successful way you found to register voters, and sort of what is your 5-year goal in terms of expanding y'all's voter registration or avenues to register voters?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, we consider our folks young Texans aged probably 17 through 35. We do some high school work, so we talk to like 16, 17-year-olds. But we, at 17 and 10 months, you can get registered to vote. I think there's a misconception as well as like we are just a voter registration group, and we're really like a youth organizing group. Voter registration is just the first step, and one of the more visible steps in that. And so because of that, we work on college campuses, community college campuses, high schools, vocational schools. We're also out in the community. We try to work in like workforce, like sort of areas where like the folks that didn't go to college, we can still talk to them, and they're in that age group and have issues that they care about. And so, so that's where we do most of our voter registration, is in those early interactions. And, that could look like us presenting to classes on college campuses, or us like, at farmers markets, or we've
setting up a booth in the square or whatever.
Yeah, like, a lot of times we just have canvassers that walk around with a clipboard and Move Texas t-shirts and that kind of thing. And so like the great part about it is like seeing it pop up from friends and supporters on social media of like, I just ran into your like organizer and like they helped me change my address or whatever. And so it's great. So because of that, it's, I think we're in a lot of different places. We diversify the places that we do voter registration, but we also are, we're evergreen. We're there we're on college campuses every single day. We don't just like pop up 3 weeks before the election and try to get as many people registered as possible. It's, like we're there, during the summertime when it's
so do all these campuses have a student chapter of Move?
Some do, some don't. Some have like a group of like engaged students. Some are just like overseen by one of our field organizers, and they just kind of go and like do voter registration. So there's different levels of sort of engagement across campuses. Like UTSA is like, being our home campus, is like highly engaged, has a student chapter, that kind of stuff. Or like maybe a new school like University of Houston has a cluster of students that are really engaged, but not a chapter yet, and is working towards that and stuff.
So what's the long-term goal of Move?
We're building power for young people across Texas. And so I think we're doing that not only through like voter registration, but it's the engagement. And it's not only just electoral engagement, but it's getting them involved in other aspects of that too. And so, I think our strategic plan shows that we want to have deeper conversations and become more of a transformational power building organization over the next 3 to 5 years. And we're going to do that by, growing to areas that, young people need, like somebody to help like uplift their voice, and where we can create spaces for young people to come together and power build together.
Will there be an advocacy arm that includes picking candidates or endorsing candidates, or is that something Move's always going to stay out of?
Yeah, our current strategic plan actually says no.
Okay.
Is like we aren't interested right now in endorsing candidates or advocating for that.
So let's talk about some of the actual successes. Stephen was talking to me about sort of what they were able to accomplish, what you all were able to accomplish in San Marcos recently. Talk to me about that. Talk to us about sort of some of the real world examples. Then I'm going to talk to y'all about, being litigants and litigious and y'all's fights for opening up voting access and voting rights. But talk to us about y'all's wins and successes in San Marcos recently.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, we went to San Marcos in 2018, and we began building at Texas State, like little by little. This is a perfect example of where we put a field organizer there that was overseeing not only San Marcos and Texas State, but also Texas Lutheran and Seguin. And but a small group of students came together. We hired fellows there the next semester, that kind of stuff. And the small group of students registered 6,500 students at Texas State, which has a population of 40,000 students on campus.
Wow.
Or that live nearby or commute in. And so what happened was the elections department there only put a polling location at Texas State for 3 days, the first 3 days of early voting, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And probably in the past, that would have been totally cool or whatever. But between us and other organizations that were doing get out the vote work and just students being deeply involved in the 2018 election, essentially day one, the line was 3 hours long, and stayed that way from open to close. Day 2, 3 hours long. Day 3, 3 hours long. So by day 3, us, Texas Civil Rights Project, a couple other organizations started calling on Hays County commissioners to expand voting at Texas State, because otherwise students would have to go off campus, take buses, that kind of stuff. And originally it was like, nope, not going to do it. And I think through the efforts on our part and the League of Women Voters and a couple other groups, they ended up changing their mind. They put 2 extra days of early voting on that campus and an election day polling location on that campus. An additional 4,500 students voted during that time. And so, it's one of those things of now elected officials in Hays County know they have to go talk to students at Texas State. And even in this last March election,
there were some electoral changes in San Marcos. Arguably as a result of this too.
Yeah, I believe that students had a major part in shifting the sort of representation and the narrative in that county for sure.
Yeah, city council or commissioners court, one of them had kind of a flip, didn't it?
I think that they basically the state house flipped. The county commissioners went almost all Democratic, I believe.
Wow.
And that kind of thing for the city council too. And so, but I think that's indicative of young people being involved, being informed.
How do you convince them to stand in line for 3 hours? They can't sit still for 3 hours.
Yeah, but I mean, it was one of those things of in March, in this past primary election, we had lines at UTSA and a couple other campuses here, and I was bouncing around town on election day, watching those and everything. And our organizers were buying pizza and having sodas and stuff because people can't get out of line.
Need to be like the rock and roll marathon.
Yeah,
every checkpoint, it's a band.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, so we were doing everything we could to keep people in line or let them know hey, if you don't want to stand in line, this polling location closes, at 7 p.m. or whatever. And so,
do y'all do any rides to the polls?
A little bit, but that's more for commuter type schools. So we'll, if Texas A&M has a campus in down south San Antonio, and then we'll shuttle people from Palo Alto over or vice versa.
Okay.
Because they're so close.
Yeah.
But for the most part, we do site-based mobilization, which is a polling location is put on a college campus most of the time because our advocacy folks fight for it. And then we throw a giant party there with a DJ and food and that kind of stuff. And it attracts a couple hundred students. And then we go vote in that
Shuffle
kind of
them in.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so, but when polls closed in Bexar County, UTSA was still had a 30-minute wait or so, but was pretty close to ending. But in Texas State, they had a 3-hour wait post the polls closing. And so I went up there with a couple of our organizers, and we like helped students, we bought pizza, had drinks.
They keep it open. Is that the law that if you're in line, then you get a vote?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that polling location closed at 11:30.
Jeez.
And so
I'm sure those poor poll workers were happy about that.
Yeah.
Okay, y'all are also heavily involved in sort of the litigation and the legal fights that are revolving around, online voter registration. Some of these, I mean, people like me think it's crazy. Why can't we register to vote online? But some of these new fights, Move actually is involved as a plaintiff or an amicus in some of these, basically a friend of the court saying, here's our position, or the actual plaintiff suing on these. Talk to us about what y'all are hoping to accomplish through some of these pieces of litigation that are moving through the courts right now.
Yeah, we saw the legal avenue as a new sort of tactic for us. We first deployed that, I think, in 2017 in the SB4 case. So we are still a plaintiff on that case in the Fifth Circuit right now, and so that's under consideration and on hold. But yeah, we saw legal litigation as like an opportunity for us to uplift the voices of young people into that space that they would normally not have been in. And so we did that through, being involved in, like, we have 3 ongoing cases right now. Stringer 2, which is a case on the DPS voter registration system. Like, you can walk into the DPS station to get your driver's license, and that is the only type of truly online voter registration.
Yeah, right.
In the state,
It's something strange like that. If you renew your license in the DMV, the law says you have to be able to register to vote at that time, right? But if you renew your license on your home computer,
it doesn't do it. Yeah.
Even though the law says you have to be able to. So that's one of those fights.
That's Stringer 2. Richardson is a vote by mail signature case right now that's under litigation. And then also we are an intervener in the TDP case on vote by mail, which was just at least not stayed or upheld, while the appeals process happens in the 14th.
The vote by mail case in which people are saying that fear of COVID is a disability, so I should be able to vote by mail.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Is Drew Galloway the plaintiff in any of those, or is Move Texas?
Nope, I represent the organization. So it's either Move Texas Civic Fund, which is our 501c3 entity, or Move Texas Action.
Well, I didn't know if you sue the state of Texas, you sue Ken Paxton. So I didn't know if Move, when they file, actually it's
no.
Drew
We
Galloway.
do it from an organizational standpoint, but if like the organization is like called in for deposition or whatever, or representation, I do that. So. Part of my
Have you been deposed yet?
Yes.
How'd you like it?
It was okay. Was
he nice to you?
I actually had an attorney from the Attorney General's office. She was very nice. And it was long though. It was like 6 hours, but it was.
She's just doing her job.
Yeah, exactly. So.
I was actually joking with somebody today. I never understand when defense lawyers act like it's their own money. I mean, sometimes they get so worked up about it. So you've got the San Marcos success story where you can actually really put numbers and wins to a movement. You have litigation in which y'all are actual movements in court seeking to change the way we do things in the state of Texas in a way that would benefit, honestly, everybody. I mean, I don't want to go vote and also die of COVID. I mean, like, it's just this bizarre idea where I don't think we should have to prove a disability to begin with. Then I don't think that this should even be a consideration of, is the risk of COVID worth it? And they just did this in Wisconsin, and there was a political game, and they ended up losing that election.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, sweet justice.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things of like, we see any vote that's disenfranchised as a problem for democracy, and so we're going to push back on that at any point.
Is your organization planning on staying focused on youth mobilization, or is there a consideration or thoughts about moving into some of these other traditionally disenfranchised communities?
No, we are a organization that's focused on young, predominantly people of color, but young people.
And almost all college educated, it sounds like.
Yeah, for the most part. We have done more work recently in the last 12 months with vocational schools or sort of workforce spaces, that kind of thing, because we see that as like there are folks that are just not fortunate enough to, or maybe just don't want to go to college, and they would much
And that's a
rather
way larger percentage of young people than
yeah.
are in college. So
Totally.
is there any groups, or do you have any thoughts on how you enfranchise and mobilize the classically disenfranchised, communities of color, along with the we don't vote young people? I mean, that's a bad combo. Your organization is doing a great job. Are there organizations that are focusing on that sort of odd demographic of, people that really aren't involved in the process?
Yeah, there's a couple organizations in the state that are doing some, like, I think everybody's taking like a little bite of like that pie, because they all have to be messaged to differently. So again, like if I was going to like talk to like even like over 50-year-old voters, it's your civic duty, like now's the time for you to like represent your country type thing is the perfect messaging for them. For young people, that actually is like the correct messaging for young people is like, be a part of this group or be a part of this movement, or we need your voice now in this, so it's a much more collective stance versus an individual action.
Do you have any independent thoughts on why Vote or Die didn't catch on and work?
I don't know. Like, this is the moment.
When I
for it,
interned
right?
in D.C. is when all that was kind of kicking in, and I just always remember. I mean, I was fresh off the turnip truck, and I just kind of remember thinking, "Does this work? I mean, like this is so just absurd."
Well, and young people, one of the things is that they are hyper in tune to authenticity. So that's why, like, I think we're so successful is we put young people in charge of social media. Like, I don't run the TikTok channel, like that,
So lots of memes.
Yeah, exactly. And so like our most popular content and that kind of stuff that's generated by our organizers or that kind of stuff. And so, and then they like just are in tune with that being authentic. And
does it ever go
genuine.
too far? And you're like, oh, hey, don't post that.
Yeah, we have to like strike down some stuff every once in a while.
Okay, so what you're doing is fantastic. We've given a little, my firm and me have given a little to support it because I think it's great. You need more involvement. We need more people that are younger than me and you voting, because it's like a lot of communities that just, they either vote for things that are bad against them or they don't vote knowing that things are going to be passed that are bad for them. And the people that do vote, those things are usually pretty good for them a lot of times.
It's also like a really special organization too. Like I think every nonprofit executive would say this, but like it is like this place. It is a political home for young people and specifically new voters of people that are new to politics. And so we have folks that like come through our fellowship program and then they leave, and then they go like run campaigns, or they will like show up in the state house or whatever. We have like this amazing alumni group of hundreds of people that have come through our program, in San Antonio City Hall. Out of the 11 offices, 8 of them have MOVE alumni in them. So it's like we've built this like leadership pipeline that, I think when most people think of MOVE, they think of like voter registration, that kind of thing. But it's actually that like sort of like skills building, like the building of like a civic culture inside the organization that I think is like going to be the lasting like legacy for MOVE.
So is this the stop for you? Or are you going to run for office?
No, I don't want to run for office at all. So I don't know how much longer I'll be at MOVE. I'm not planning on leaving anytime soon. But it is one of those things of like like I think MOVE being a young, organization. It's imperative that we have like youth leaders and that kind of stuff. So I don't know what I'm going to do after this. I'm going to be very sad because I love MOVE, but until then, I'm going to do my best to register and turn out as many young voters as I can.
Okay, well, I hope y'all have more successes like San Marcos, and then we can talk about those. I mean, those are fantastic ways to sell your story by having an actual, this is what was bad, this is what we did to fix it, and here was the success of fixing it. I mean, those are the stories that resonate.
Yeah, in 2018, we turned out 68% of the people we registered. That's like a solid 15 points higher than like the national like youth organizing average. And if you don't talk to youth voters at all, they vote much lower.
Yeah.
So like we're obviously talking to them in the right way and that kind of stuff. And we've got stories like that. And even like we're new to Houston, but we've got stories of like how Al Gore crashed one of our parties at the polls like this last
Still alive
in March. Yeah. And so yeah, he just we found out the day before that he was gonna come to one. And same way, we've had the same thing happen.
Did he say I'm cereal? South Park is most of what's going on in my brain usually. Okay, so I want to pivot a little bit. You've also got interesting stories, and I want to talk to you about a couple of them. One of them was that after you got out of school, you wanted to get into the wine business. You went to Culinary Institute in Hyde Park.
I did. I graduated high school, wanted to be a winemaker. There's not really many vineyards in outside of Augusta, Georgia.
No?
And so
blueberry wine or whatever thing out there?
Great cow and horse farms.
Okay.
But yeah. So I went to London. I studied there for about a year and a half. I worked in a hotel off of Hyde Park, and I worked in a pub and that kind of stuff. And so I learned like sort of the wine spirits industry, and specifically like the wine industry. Came back, went to the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, learned how to cook, learned about wine, and left there, went to work for a small wine shop right outside of Hyde Park near the college. And then I jumped to Total Wine. Loved my time at Total Wine. Worked up and down the East Coast, sort of new market development as well, jumping from city to city, opening new stores, getting it settled, that kind of stuff. And then that's when I came to San Antonio with Specs.
Did you graduate from CIA?
I did.
So my understanding was there's like the cook route, and then there's like the restaurant manager route. Is that correct?
There's actually the two main routes are cook or baker, and then after that is the sort of like restaurant management or culinary management degree.
Did you know either of the guys that are at Cured?
No, I didn't.
Steve and Bob, the manager, both went there.
Yeah, there's a great alumni network here.
Is there?
Johnny Hernandez,
I didn't know that.
Johnny Hernandez, I think, is the head of the alumni, national alumni right now. I could be wrong about that, but he is definitely.
He won't listen to this,
yeah.
so it doesn't matter.
he is a big alumni from CI.
Okay, what got you into wine?
It was one of these things that like I went to Europe for the first time when I was 15. My grandparents are German, and so I went to like Spain, Germany, France, and I was like, this is amazing. I'm used to like farms, but that have like cows and chickens, and this is like got vineyards, and it's like incredible. And so I was like, this is what I want to do.
Yeah, wine grows in the best weather and locations. There's not like ugly places that have vineyards.
Well, and even like the ugliest soil is the best for wine.
Yeah.
So wine likes to be stressed out. Grapes like to be stressed out. And so like, in like Pomerol in France, it's like literal rocks that you have to like plant these vines
It's so stressful in Napa in the hills, and the fog rolling in. It's so stressful. Yeah.
It's a hard life.
We don't need soil though, so what do we care? But it's always great weather. It's never too hot, never too cold.
Yeah. They're always surrounded by good food. And so like as
so was it the romanticism of it? Was the taste of it? Did you like to get a little buzz?
I think it was just like, hey, there's this like actual thing. There's this profession where I can learn how to taste this, and that has like literal like millions of different types of aromas and maturation and all that stuff. So like this is like so complex. I was a big nerd in high school, if that did not surprise you at all, as a 14-year-old bagpipe player in Augusta, Georgia. And so, but it was one of those things of like, there's these complexities, and like in France.
Were you wearing a suit when you were 14?
I totally was. Like, I totally was the kid in high school that wore the sports coat, the corduroy sports coat with the patches.
Perfect.
That's me.
All right.
So yeah, it was one of those things that like, in France, you can like, this vineyard can give you a completely different wine than one that's half a mile down the road.
The whole left bank, east bank, or right bank thing.
Exactly. Like if it's on a hill versus flat, or and so that was fascinating to me.
Okay, what's your favorite wine movie?
That's a good question. I like the documentaries better than I do the movie, like the fictional movies.
Which one? Somm?
Somm probably is.
It had terrible reviews, but it was fantastic.
I thought it was great.
Yeah, I did too. Yeah.
And so,
did you see the one about the counterfeiting?
Yeah, I did.
It's crazy.
I was actually in the business whenever like that happened in like the early.
Did you know that guy, the
I did not
Asian
know
American
that person,
guy?
no.
Yeah.
But I used to work at so I did my internship at CIA at Restaurant Danielle, which holds the Zaxby's wine auctions.
Oh, wow.
So I worked in the kitchen and was learning how to cook and that kind of stuff. But it was one of those things to see like a $30,000 bottle of wine get sold was just like I was like I have to do this.
Okay, so what are some of the one or two most rare bottles you've drank?
That's a great question.
You've told me about 20 times today that I ask great questions, so you're really building me up. I appreciate this. Yeah.
I'm glad I can make you feel good. Domaine Romani Conti is one of the most expensive bottles I've ever had.
That's what he was counterfeiting a lot, DRC.
And so it was mind-blowing. It changed every 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Like it was one of those wines that you drank like the entire night and it just like changed. And it would go from like bright like raspberry like jam type like with spice to it to like earthy like raked leaves, and it was like I can still remember it now. And so
who were you with? Where were you? How did you get your hands on that?
I was at a wine dinner with like some very like rich friends, and I was not rich, but I was lucky to hang out.
It's always
with them.
better to have rich friends that share.
Yeah. And but we had great food. All the wines were great. That just happened to be like this like crazy bottle that was really good. And so, and I loved a blind taste too. And so, the second bottle that I would say is like not super rare and it's not super expensive. But it's one of those wines that I was at a blind tasting and I like picked up the glass, I smelled it, I took a small taste, and I'm like, that is 1996 Bocayu. And I was like, I 100% know, like, I know that wine, I know that region, that's Bocayu. And they pulled the bag off of it, and it was 96 Bocayu.
Nice.
So for me, that was like.
So have you ever thought going to sit for the test or anything?
I'm a level 2.
Oh, are you really? Okay.
And so like I would never sit level 3.
Level 3 is the Somm, right?
Yeah, that's the master sommelier.
And there's like 12 of them.
Yeah, I think there's probably like
50.
60 to 100 right now.
Something nutty, yeah.
But yeah, like, I mean, it's like years and years and years of dedicated experience.
And you also have to learn cigars, right?
Yeah, and service and all that
Beers,
stuff.
yeah.
And so yeah. I didn't work on the restaurant side. I worked on the retail side. So I'm also like Wine and Spirit Education Trust.
Huh. So where should normal people buy their wine?
You've got like tons of great choices here in San Antonio. So I'm obviously partial to Total Wine and to Specs.
Okay, so what's the deal with Total Wine? Total Wine's got their like winery direct things, and I always feel like that's just a kind of
you can find good stuff there.
deal.
Like I used to work there, but there's some really great gems there as well. So yeah, it definitely is like like talk to the folks there. There's usually some really passionate. I used to be a wine manager for them, so I would train.
Are they getting like kickers if they sell winery direct wines?
I don't know if they do. I don't know if they.
It just feels that way. They're always pushing these certain things on you that I've never heard of, and then the things you've heard of are never the ones that are included in the buy 6 get 10% off deal.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, it's one of those things of like, I think that
you signed a non-disclosure agreement, didn't you?
I did not. I just, I think that like for a lot of the folks that work at both Specs and Total, like they like love wine, and so the part of it is that they, I was telling you before you hopped on, it's like my lunch at like Specs would be like tasting through 10 rosés from Provence and whatever. And so it's like whenever you have somebody that comes up and says like, I want a rosé, you're like, oh my God, like I can think of 10 bottles right now.
Yeah, but by the 10th one you're tasting, I mean.
Oh, well, and most of the time in the industry you spit.
Okay.
So yeah.
And you're also a bagpipe player. And I don't know if I've ever met a bagpipe player. I'm going through my brain Rolodex. I don't think I ever have. My association with bagpipe players is kind of limited to funerals, I think, in my own mind. And also, I remember an old man telling me one time that the rudest thing anyone can do is play bagpipes indoors. I don't know why, but he told me that as like life advice. So, how'd you get into bagpipes?
That's a great question. One, they're incredibly loud. So like that's the reason why you don't want to play them indoors, or you want to most bagpipe players wear earplugs even if they play outside. Yep.
Yeah, somebody said the reason bagpipe players are always walking is to get away from the horrible noise. I looked up a bunch of bagpipe player jokes.
I was going to say to prepare for this. Yeah.
That was more interesting.
Yeah. So like so I played bassoon and oboe in middle school and high school. And so both of those are double reed instruments. During the summer of my freshman year in high school, I was like, I want to pick up another double reed. And my choices were like contrabassoon or English horn or like, things that.
Are you having a stroke?
Yeah. And unless I'm going to like go to like be a music major, like I'm not going to play professional contrabassoon with anybody, And so, so I did some research, found bagpipes, and I'm like, I'm going to teach myself bagpipes. And so I ordered a practice chanter, which is how you learn bagpipes, and then a book, and then I ordered a set of bagpipes that were like not great quality bagpipes and that kind of thing. And so I taught myself over the summer. I learned all the basics, that kind of stuff. But the first time I tried to play my bagpipes when they came in, they were not sealed properly and that kind of thing. They take a tremendous amount of air. It's a very like physical instrument, and
like just to build it up right before it starts even going.
Yeah. Like it's one of those things of like, and it takes a lot to just maintain it. So like it's a stamina instrument. Yeah. The more you play, the better you get at it. But I passed out in my front yard, and so like my grandma like ran out to get me and stuff. And so, but I hung in there. I found a teacher in Atlanta. I joined a pipe band in Augusta. And so slowly I got really good. I was a pipe sergeant of a pipe band in Augusta by the time I was 16, 17. And I was competing at that point and everything. And then when I went to London, I played a little bit in London, came back, and then sort of like, and culinary school set them down. And just like in the last like 3 or 4 years, picked them back up and that kind of stuff. But now I play like very competitively, across the United States.
Is there a pipe band in San Antonio?
There's a couple, actually.
Are you part of one?
I am, yes.
What's the name of
Alamo City Pipes and Drums.
I figured it'd be like more, I don't know, Celtish?
Like
Scottish?
Yeah, it works.
Do you have a kilt?
I have multiple kilts. So I have a pipe band kilt. I have my family kilt, and then so that's usually if I play solos, I wear my family kilt, and then if I play in the pipe band.
What is a family kilt?
Well, tartan is the actual like term for it. So tartan is basically cloth that symbolizes a family. It's basically the first like sort of protest cloth because it was banned by the English.
So it's not your specific family.
It's the Galloway tartan, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so yeah. And
so you are Scottish?
Yeah, my great-great-great-grandfather came from Scotland.
Do any other cultures play culturally play it?
There's extremely popular in Brittany, France. They're very popular in Canada, mainly because of the Scottish influence there.
Wales or Ireland?
Different types of pipes. So the uilleann pipes are in Ireland. So if you think of like the Titanic bagpipes, like that's from the Titanic movie, those are Irish pipes, uilleann pipes.
Can you play those?
No, those are extremely difficult.
Really?
Yeah, even more difficult than
I read somewhere that it's the hardest instrument to learn.
It's probably, yes, mainly because there's no way to stop the air flow. So even on the uilleann pipes, so if I'm playing, I can push it on my knee and stop the air from flowing. But like once you start playing bagpipes, you can't stop.
That's why there's the constant.
Yeah. So you've got the 3 drones playing steady note, and then the chanter, which is the part you actually make the melody on, has to plays as well. And so and then there's no way to stop the air, so you have to add very small notes in between the notes, which are called grace notes. And then there's series of small notes called embellishments that are put together.
Huh.
And so it's they say the average time is 7 years to make a high level piper.
Huh. Do you think it would be harder to learn that than a giant harp? Because those always look pretty impossible.
Yeah. I would say that like the stamina part with bagpipes is different than most instruments. So like I could sit down and play flute or clarinet or whatever, but like you can physically just not be able. Like it takes you time to build up to bagpipes.
So what is sort of the next play with the bagpipes? Just keep competing?
Yeah, I just want to keep. So like right now, like normally I would be like traveling to the East Coast quite a bit on the weekends and that kind of stuff. But everything's shut down because.
Oh, you're traveling to compete.
Yeah.
Huh.
And so a lot of it right now is online competitions. So I placed 4th in 2 competitions at the world's level.
You know, you say that on your Facebook, but you don't have videos of it up.
No.
You going to share one of those videos?
One of these days I will.
Yeah.
So
maybe with us, it can roll out with this episode.
Yeah.
What is the plan for Move in terms of battling COVID? How can listeners help? And what are you hoping changes as a result of this pandemic? And you know, we're redefining what it means to do everything now. So what are you hoping comes out of this?
Yeah, I think that COVID has taught us, like, we knew that there were like fractures in democracy, especially here in Texas. You know, I don't think that most people don't realize that Texas is one of the hardest, if not the hardest, most difficult states to register to vote in the entire nation. If I want to register you to vote, I have to go take a class in the county I live in, and that class is only given like once or twice a month on the same day. And so if I'm out of town that day or I'm at work, I can't take the class, so I can't register people to vote. But once I get deputized, then I have to follow all these rules, and everything is in hand, and I have to go drop it back off.
Jeez.
So like, you know, when we say that we registered 55 to 60,000 people in the last 2 years, like that is a big deal, and that's predominantly because that is every conversation is a 2 to 4 minute interaction with somebody.
Plus, everybody had to get deputized.
Yeah, plus you have to, you know, like we have organizers that are deputized in 15 counties.
By county, I forget you said that.
So yeah, you have to go to each individual county, and so you know it's easier for me to get on a plane, or used to be pre-COVID, easier to get on a plane, fly to Denver, get off, register people to vote in Denver than it is to go to Guadalupe County and register people to vote.
That's so bizarre.
And so I think that COVID is showing all of these like sort of fractures in the system, from voter registration, because voter registration rates have fallen statewide, to, you know, the need for like you know, vote by mail for all voters, to, you know, increased like polling locations, and we need to get more young people involved in as poll workers. Most poll workers are over the age of 55, and
very white and very old.
Yeah, and
is kind of the demographic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, like, how do we get more young people involved? One of the ways that we did that is we pushed Bexar County, Harris County, and Dallas County to increase the amount that they were paying their poll workers. So from $9, Bexar County went from $9 or $10 an hour to $17 an hour.
I didn't know they were paid.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so if you work, and high schoolers can get out of high school to go work at the
Is that right?
Yeah. So one of the things that we're doing is, like, you know, encouraging high schoolers to sign up for that, and encouraging college students to sign up.
$17 an hour is a lot of money.
Yeah, especially, you know, it's only 2 weeks maybe, or it's only election day, but still that's like, you know, that's maybe will cover some of your books in college or something like that.
How can people learn more about Move, and how can people learn more about what Move is doing on sort of an ongoing basis?
Yeah, the easiest way is to follow us. Our website is movetexas.org, all spelled out. And then follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Move Texas.
All the handles are at Move Texas?
Yeah.
Well, Drew, thank you for coming.
Justin, it's a pleasure. Thanks so much for doing this.
You're going to give me a video of bagpipes for our website, right? I need that it factor to draw people in, and I feel like that's it.
That's it. Maybe that's it.
You should have came into the office playing them. It would have scared the hell out of everybody. All right, that about does it for this episode. Thanks, Drew, for coming on. Thanks for telling us more about Move Texas. I knew generally what it was. I really didn't have any understanding of the scope and breadth of what y'all are doing. I think it's great. So thank you for doing what you do. It helps us all. So thank you for coming on. After y'all have another big win or another big election, it'd be great to get you back on and see sort of how that budget moved, how many people have been registered. So we'll keep the conversation going.
Sounds great.
Join us on our next episode. We're going to have next week the guy from Alamo Brewing is planning on coming on. Mr. Cooper from the San Antonio Food Bank is coming on next week, as well as CEO of one of our publicly traded companies here in town, Ryan Pape, who's with Expels, coming on as well. Those will get trickled out over the next few weeks. Guest wish list continues. Top 3 are going to keep going until one of them comes on. Coach Pop, you're probably never coming off the list. I'll have to just do an emeritus list. Shea Serrano, Patty Mills, all the great things you're doing and your love for our city. If you know any of them, help us out. We'd love to get them on. So thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Alamo Hour. You are all what make this city so great. We hope you join us next week. In the meantime, subscribe to our podcast. Check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/Alamo Hour or our website, alamohour.com. Until next time, Viva San Antonio!